you so much, Liam, for the lovely introduction. Hi, everyone. So, in the last few days, or maybe in the last few hours, all of you made a decision, a choice to actually be in this session over the rest of the sessions that are happening at the same time, right? So what made you choose this session to attend? Let's do a quick show of hands. So how many of you actually built some kind of prioritization matrix that spitted out this session as the choice to attend today? Anyone? No one? Oh, maybe there are a couple of people there who did it. All right. And how many of you actually ran an A/B test on the speakers who are going to have the same slot as me? Anyone did that? Oh, there are one or two people who did that. Well, you know, I think most of the other people actually ended up here in this session today because of a hunch, a feeling in the gut, or what I call intuition. The good news is, whether you came here because of that hunch or you did put in some effort to do your prioritization, you're all in the right room. Because in a minute, I'm going to take you on this journey where we at the World Economic Forum were able to use our gut feeling to double our audience growth. And I believe that intuition is actually quite important in decision making. It's just that we as product managers don't often appreciate it enough, right? And it's a great tool because all of us have it. We all have our guts, their feeling, and we all have that power to make the right kind of choices and decisions. So I hope that by the end of this session, most of you, or at least some of you, are inspired to appreciate that power within yourselves and that you feel a bit more confident every day in your decisions. So let me give you a bit of background about who we are at World Economic Forum. It was quite impressive, actually, that a lot of you raised your hands and said you know who we are. But maybe it's still interesting to hear from me, who's coming from the organization. So we are a nonprofit, and our mission is actually to work on global challenges, the most pressing ones around the world, with various stakeholders from across walks of life. On the B2B side, we do this with stakeholders from governments, from corporates, from startups, from other nonprofits, and we engage with them through communities, meetings and forums on research and stuff like that. And then on the B2C side of it, we engage with public, with people around the world, just like you and me. And we do that digitally through our website, which is our key B2C platform. And on that website, we offer them content as products to engage. We tell them the stories about the outcomes, the impact of what we are doing with all our stakeholders. We tell them the stories about the latest research trends on all global issues. For example, this week we are actually having a meeting on AI governance. And if you were to visit our website, you would see all the outcomes and key discussions that actually happened around governance on AI for normal people that impacts all of us. So these are two keywords to remember here: nonprofit and content, or content as product, because these are two cornerstones in my story, and I'll take you through them. But before I start the journey and take you a bit through it, let us dial back and talk about data. Oh, we love data, don't we, as product managers? And well, I couldn't miss a slide on data as well. Data is great. It brings a lot of objectivity in our decision making, right? We are able to see past our biases. And at the same time, we are also able to enable our stakeholders to see past their biases through data, establishing high amount of transparency. And then data is great for also being accurate in terms of project planning or in terms of predicting the outcomes or assessing all kinds of risks. But wait a minute, you must be wondering that this session is about appreciating intuition. So why am I talking about data? Well, data is the hero ingredient in my story. Well, let me correct that. It's the hero ingredient that was missing in my story. So let me tell you about the starting of this story. When I joined the World Economic Forum as a product manager for the website, which is majorly B2C, I noticed that a lot of our growth had happened on the back of our social presence. While that was all right, it wasn't really moving the needle. And I wanted to move the needle by formulating a robust growth strategy. And when I started doing that, I was astounded that there was absolutely no data available to support that. And I was missing 3 key types of data. Now let's recall the 2 keywords I asked you to remember: content and nonprofits. Nonprofits are quite unique the way they are because they're quite often in their own niche areas. They're very different from each other. Let me give you some examples. World Bank, WHO, Red Cross, World Economic Forum, they all are doing completely different things, creating impact, but in very different ways, with very different types of audiences, in very different business models, and with very different products. So there is no industry benchmark data available, or that was the case when I started my journey. The second thing that I was missing was knowing really where to land with our products, because our products are mostly content, but then we are neither a news organization that tells people about what's happening in the world. We have our unique stories. We also have a lot of audio and video content, but then we are not like Netflix or Disney Plus, so that doesn't suit us either. And therefore, what those industries might have done to grow their audience base might not be the right fit. And even their target audience might not be the right kind of case studies for us to look into. So I was missing that kind of feedback. The other thing that's interesting about content in nonprofits is that all our content is basically public good. So it remains in the public domain. Anybody can access it. Anybody can engage with it without actually giving us any of their identification. So there was no way to actually spot the users, run user tests, or like ask them, so what's working, what's not working, why wouldn't you be part of our engagement story, and so on. Apart from the feedback and the benchmark data, it was also very difficult to predict the kind of outcomes I could create. And that meant not knowing what should actually be the right KPIs or metrics. How long will they last? How much I will have to adapt? Can I even promise some kind of potential growth? And I didn't have answers to any of those things. So I decided to leverage my intuition, and I made a lot of tough choices. Tough choices like, where should this growth come from? Should it come from the content that we produce, or should it come from somewhere else, right? And then what should be the definition of our North Star metric? What should be the other supporting KPIs? How long are we going to measure it? How will we move? And when do we expect that growth to happen? So all of those were just hunches. And I'm glad that I used my hunches because, surprise, surprise, we were able to post 100% growth in the first year. So as you can see, in 2019, it was the early days when I just joined the forum. And as I started understanding the landscape and I saw that there were huge gaps in available data, I started leveraging my intuition. And that's where between 2020 and 2021, you actually see a huge jump. I think that's amazing because I remember yesterday in the conversation with Avni, she did mention something about taking risks even if you don't know what's going to happen. And that's exactly my first learning point in my journey, that any product manager or a product team can actually leverage intuition in the absence of data or in the absence of the right kind of data. And I think that's important as well. Now, we all use our intuition some way or the other, and we all know that, it somehow plays a role. Maybe in ideation, in quick decision making, we use it to interpret data itself quite often. We are also often using it to build collaborative teams. We are using it for building empathy towards our stakeholders and users, right? So there are lots of good things about intuition. And then we saw early on that data is also quite good, actually. So in this journey, my intuition kicked in for the second time. And it asked a very interesting question that, okay, we started this journey without any data on the basis of intuition. And while that was great in the first year, we did establish some metrics. We did capture some data. We are tracking something now. So let's just combine the data with intuition. And listening to my intuition for the second time actually got us the same repeat results. I must say, the second time, the growth rate was more than 100%, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that intuition got me the 100% jump the first time. And in the second time, it not only got me the bare minimum 100% jump to repeat the feat, but actually it showed that I could sustain that growth over time and have a lot of positive outcomes based on this. So this is where I learned my second lesson, that data and intuition together can actually make for a very powerful product strategy that can bring sustained long-term outcomes. Now, data and intuition together not only helped me post these big numbers, but I saw the benefits of using both of them together across areas in my work life. For example, we became really better at decision making. I mean, data is good for objectivity, but intuition actually allowed me to move fast and make quick decisions. I was also able to spot patterns much early on using data because we had a lot of new users, the audience base was growing, but then to be able to capture that growth and to enable engagement, we had to move fast and enable a lot of different experiences and user journeys that came out of the intuition or the hunches. We also saw improvements in risk assessment and mitigating them early on using data. But at the same time, intuition actually had led us to take some risks, right? And our intuition also performed better over time, knowing very well which risks pay off, which ones don't, and which ones are new risks that we will continue taking for the future. Trust was also better built on the basis of intuition because data will get you transparency. But to be able to build that relationship with all your stakeholders where they're continuously bought into your vision, you need trust. And that comes from your gut feeling on how to navigate your organization or your stakeholder landscape. So the next organic question that probably arises is how to combine data and how to combine intuition into your strategy. I call this a strategy mix, and everyone can have their own. In our situation, as you saw, we started with 0% data, 100% intuition. And then over the first year, as we started collecting more data, we moved to a mix that was 50% intuition and 50% data. And of course, it's all trackable because you know as product managers what kind of decisions you're making every day. how many of those actually are on the back of a data, and how many of those you actually need to just guess or have a hunch on. So it's actually very easy to track and to know what's the mix. And then over time, as we had more and more data and we were able to refine those data points that are crucial to our strategy, we could move to a 25% dependency on intuition and 75% dependency on data. And on my slides here, I have segmented the data further into quantitative and qualitative. I think you can do it the way you want. So the mix actually depends on where you are, what's the market landscape, what's your industry, what's the stage of your company. Maybe if you are in a fully regulated sort of industry space, you need to always have 100% data mix, and maybe there's no space for intuition. And maybe if you are the first mover ahead of the curve on a certain creative industry, you will have to depend a lot on your hunches, right? So this brings me to my third learning point that I had in my journey, that the strategy mix can actually evolve over time as we measure more and as we scale the operations or scale the strategy. Let's quickly recap together the 3 learning points that we had in our journey at the World Economic Forum. The first one was about product managers being able to leverage their intuition to take risks in the absence of data or the right kind of data. The second one was that data and intuition together can actually be quite good for your product strategy and can bring sustained long-term outcomes. And the third one was that the strategy mix you have can potentially evolve or should evolve over time as you measure more and you scale up. I think there was something quite interesting about Yariv's presentation yesterday. He posed a question on what might be the responsibility of product managers in the world of AI. And I believe as long as the human gut has not been disrupted, we can continue to bring our gut feeling in that space. Thank you, everyone. And I would love to hear your thoughts or interesting stories on using intuition.
Sakshi, thank you. I love seeing the connection between your talk just now and the previous one by Sultan. All right, we have some time for some Q&A. So I'm going to look for a show of hands. We've got a roaming mic. Who's got a question for Sakshi? I see there are some hands up here. Yes, all right, thank you.
Thanks for the talk. I was actually wondering, how do you determine the strategy mix? So is it also based on intuition in the end of the day, or how do you measure 50, 30, 20, or do you have like a spreadsheet or anything like that?
Yeah, so basically this was based on me tracking what are the types of decisions I make every day on the growth operations, and then kind of tracking against it. How did I arrive at the decision, right? And in the beginning, that Excel sheet looked like intuition across the activities, across the daily activities. But then over time, as we were tracking more data, I was like, hey, wait a minute, actually we have some data on this, right? Or we could have some data on this. And I went back to data and I saw there was something interesting. And then I marked that off as, oh, this decision was done based on data and not intuition. So that's how the mix evolved. Now, it doesn't always evolve suddenly. There is an overtime change, but that's why I only spoke about the yearly changes, because from one year to the other, there was really that noticeable big change. Does that answer your question?
Awesome. I see another hand just over here. And then
I have a question.
All right, awesome.
Okay, so you talk in the beginning like product managers can use their gut feeling and intuition. I'm actually interested to know, when should we actually use intuition and gut feeling? Because at the end of the day, you cannot just fire a bullet in the air. You need something to base your intuition and gut feeling on.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. So quite often when you need to think outside the box and it's something new that you're trying to do that has never been done before, there are no clear data within your organization or externally, there's nothing in your industry that you can actually use, no case studies, no easy ways to get user feedback, do A/B tests, things like that. That's when you actually use your intuition. And beyond that, I think it also depends on very specific problems you might be trying to solve for your team or within your organization. For example, you might have some brainstorming sessions where you want everyone to be super creative and think of moonshot ideas. I think that's where people can use their hunch, because that is something unique that isn't coming out of what everyone else has done, right? The third area you can actually do this is to build relationships and to actually navigate people who are your stakeholders, your consumers, your clients, whatever you call them, because that's where the product managers need to feel and understand what ticks, what works, what makes people buy into their strategy or align with them. So I think that's great for relationship building. And yes, you can say that it's intuitive data that you're processing all the time, but you will never have hard-written data somewhere that tells you that, hey, your team member today is feeling quite low because they are not bought into this work and they're not feeling it, right? It's you who can feel it, and you are the one who can address it the way you know how you work with this person or what might work with them. No problem.
I see another hand just over here.
Hey, thanks so much. My question is, how would you define intuition? Like the gut feeling, the thought is coming from, where is it arriving and what's the basis of that?
That's a very interesting question. I think we are moving a little bit towards psychology there. But so everyone has this intuition, right? Because we as human beings are super powerful. We are constantly and unconsciously collecting a lot of data that's always present around us. And that data is in different formats, right? It can be emotions. It can be just knowing the environment. It can be facts that we see around us that, oh, the chairs are red in color. That's a fact, but I know that because I'm seeing it. So it's everything that our sensory organs are sensing at all times. Now, that data gets processed internally and unconsciously without us knowing. So that's where it comes from. For some people, the visual data could be more impactful and probably that stays longer with them. Whereas for some people, the feelings and emotions they feel in a moment, or the feelings and emotions of others in the room, could be the stronger data points that they process. So it's up to everyone, but we all have it, you know.
I have a follow-up question on that. I'm curious about what we as product people can do to train our gut for intuition-based decisions.
I think that's a very interesting question as well. I think we are often quite up in our heads. And I think we spoke about this, Liam, previously. So we are very cognitive, right? We need to make a lot of decisions. We need to think a lot every day. So we are really up in our minds. And what happens is sometimes we are so up in our minds that we are not really focusing on what we are feeling through our body or through our emotions. And that's where you can do whatever works for you. Like you can go for a walk. People say, oh, taking a walk helped me clear my head. Actually, they're not clearing their head. They're grounding themselves because they're walking and they are beginning to feel their legs, They're beginning to feel their body parts. It could be meditation. If you want to feel your gut, your breathing, you could do that. So there are different ways to do it. Some people practice mindfulness. Some people also need some kind of matrix to actually start feeling their gut or intuition. So there are lots of material out there, and you can do what works for you. But take that risk, and go with the first choice that appeals to you, and you will know that you made that choice based on your gut. Maybe your gut actually told you to do some research, or maybe your gut already knew that, hey, I just want to go and sleep for 10 minutes every day, and that helps me. So.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, if there are any in the audience. All right, in the middle over here.
Hey, thank you very much. I have a question. You mentioned that in the first year, a lot of decisions were driven by the intuition. So how did you manage to persuade your stakeholders to invest into those product features or whatever it was, if the proposal was coming purely from the intuition and without the data?
Yeah, so the key here was the trust and being transparent about what I don't know. And I made sure that the proposals I was making to my stakeholders, I was being very clear that we actually don't have anything to lose, right? If we do nothing, we stay here. We are not going to go down from here. But if we try, if we take that risk, maybe we will move the needle. And if that happens, it will open up something big for us. So I think people started understanding it. And initially, because they knew that, there's not much data and there's no clear outcomes to expect, they really expected nothing. And that was great, because expect nothing and then I give them 100% growth. Well, then that was the business proposal for the next year. So, yeah.
All right. I did see one other question in the middle. If we could pass the mic back over here, I'll let you finish off. Thank you.
Hi. Intuition is something very personal. It comes from your experiences in your life. How do you build a strategy around that can be shared with your team and get them motivated? Because it's something very personal.
That's a good question. I think there are different ways to go about it. And just yesterday, I think there was a workshop that was about habit building. And I think a lot of those habits can actually help your team members refine or build their intuition. For example, most people see development of intuition when they have done a lot of work. It comes from being an expert in the domain or having hands-on done some work. But then there are always younger product managers who don't have that kind of experience. And that's where you put them into mock situations, or you give them mock projects or products to strategize on and to think about. You can also nudge them to read more. You can share your experiences with each other in the team. And all of these things kind of accelerate everyone's learnings, and they get more exposed to things. They have a better perception about how they think and feel about the products that you're building. So that's my answer to you.